She said, "You're really annoying," while I was holding her. The words landed heavier than they should have. My arms were still around her shoulders, the way they had been 100 quiet nights before. But this time, instead of leaning in, she pulled away slightly, like my presence itself had become something irritating. I remember the small details. The dim yellow light in her living room, the quiet hum of the ceiling fan, her phone lighting up every few seconds with messages she didn't bother to hide. For a moment, I just looked at her. Not angry, not even surprised, just aware, because it wasn't really about that one sentence. It was the tone, the dismissal, the way she said it, like the care I gave her had become a burden she no longer respected. So I nodded once and said calmly, "All right, I'll give you some space." She shrugged like it didn't matter. But as I walked out that night, closing the door softly behind me, I realized something important. Sometimes the quietest revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's letting them experience life without everything you used to give them. I've always been the quiet one, the one who listens, who notices, who remembers. People see me and assume I'm harmless, easy to overlook. Growing up, I learned early that attention comes only when it's demanded loudly. But I never needed the noise. I preferred watching, calculating, and understanding. In relationships, I've often been the steady presence, the one who waits, who gives more than they take, who forgives silently. That patience is my strength, but others mistake it for weakness. She, in particular, treated me like background music, pleasant, familiar but replaceable. I saw it in the way she laughed off my suggestions, the way she dismissed my concerns with a shrug, the way she expected care and warmth without acknowledgement. I don't hold grudges in the explosive way some do. I reflect, I plan. I let people reveal their true colors, quietly noting every slight, every underestimation. And I've learned that those who underestimate me always pay the price. Eventually, not with anger, but with absence. Because I have a strange talent. I can disappear without a trace. And when I return, it's under my own terms. Observed, remembered, and impossible to ignore. I am not easily forgotten. I just let people think they are done with me. Every conversation with her became a delicate dance I wasn't allowed to lead. She smiled, but it never reached her eyes. Her laughter would cut through a room, warm with others while mine went unnoticed, swallowed by the background hum of her life. I noticed the way she leaned away when I tried to sit closer, fingers tapping lightly on her phone screen, pretending not to hear the small truths I offered. The casual dismissals, "It's fine. Don't worry about it," layered over time, each one like a tiny weight pressing down on my patience. I felt it in the pause before she answered, in the faint sigh when she realized I expected more than superficial attention. Even gestures that once felt intimate had become small betrayals. My hand brushed hers, she flinched. I shared a thought she had once cherished. She scoffed softly. Each glance, each tilt of her head, carried the unspoken judgment. "You don't matter enough." And still I stayed, quietly present, carefully watching. Each slight fed a slow burning, awareness that respect cannot be demanded. It must be recognized, or it fades into absence. By the end, I realized the tension wasn't mine to fix. It belonged to her. And the balance of power had already begun to shift. I remember the moment clearly, sudden in its clarity, yet long in the build-up. She was laughing at something trivial with friends, her phone forgotten for a second on the table. I reached for it to pass the time, and her eyes flicked to me, not warm, not curious, just a flash of mild annoyance. That tiny look, so effortless to her, broke something inside me. It wasn't anger that surged. It was recognition. Years of quiet patience, unnoticed gestures, subtle betrayals. They all added up to one truth I could no longer ignore. My care, my presence, my effort had become invisible. I didn't yell. I didn't confront. I simply nodded to myself and made a decision. Enough was enough. From that moment, I stopped filling the empty spaces she left. I stopped bending to her moods, stopped anticipating her needs before she voiced them, stopped being the silent safety net she assumed would always be there. It wasn't dramatic. There were no storms or confrontations, just a quiet turning inward, a recalibration of focus. I would live my life fully, deliberately, with no expectation that she would notice. And as I walked away that evening, I felt the weight of years of patience lift, and a strange, unshakable freedom settle in its place. I didn't act out of impulse. Revenge, I knew, was most effective when calculated, invisible, and inevitable. I began by mapping the patterns she relied on. Her social habits, her routines, the way she depended on my presence without acknowledgement. Every detail mattered. The timing of her calls, the friends she leaned on, even the apps she checked first thing in the morning. I created distance without drawing attention. No messages, no calls, no explanations, just a measured withdrawal. Simultaneously, I focused on myself, finishing projects I had postponed, networking quietly, building skills that she had always assumed were secondary to my support role. Contracts at work, deadlines, and small financial gains became tools in my arsenal. Nothing illegal, nothing dramatic, just leverage she would notice only when it mattered. I updated accounts, removed auto debits she had access to, and ensured my professional credibility was solid. Even socially, I let my absence speak louder than words. Invitations she expected me to fill went unanswered. Subtle acknowledgments she had taken for granted were redirected elsewhere. By the time she began to feel the void, it wasn't a sudden collapse. It was a natural consequence of her own disregard. My revenge wasn't loud. It was undeniable, earned through patience, planning, and an unshakable calm. Weeks passed, and I watched from the edges of my own life as the consequences unfolded. Silent, inevitable, and precise. Invitations she once assumed I would accept went unanswered. Birthdays came and went without my presence. The little gestures she had counted on. The coffee left just the right temperature. The messages timed to soothe a bad day vanished. At first she didn't notice. She filled her days with noise, friends, work, endless scrolling. But the warmth, the care she had relied on, doesn't get replaced by laughter or distractions. I saw it in the way her smiles faltered, in the slight hesitation in her voice when she finally reached out, testing if I would respond. When she called, it wasn't anger, it was uncertainty. A subtle tension, like touching a surface she thought solid, only to feel it shift beneath her fingers. The realization hit slowly. The person she had taken for granted was no longer available. I didn't gloat, I didn't justify. I merely continued with my life, watching the natural outcome of her neglect. The void I left wasn't punishment, it was a reflection of what she had ignored. And in that quiet, deliberate absence, the power had shifted, undeniable and emotionally piercing. Her friends started noticing before she did. Casual comments, subtle glances, questions like, "Where's he been?" or "Is he okay?" carried an undercurrent of curiosity and slowly, admiration. They saw the absence I created not as a void to fill, but as proof of my quiet strength. She, on the other hand, reacted in a way that was telling. The casual confidence she once carried became hesitant. Invitations she had expected me to answer were left unread. Her attempts to reconnect tinged with insecurity. Every message she sent had an edge of calculation, testing, boundaries she had once ignored. The stakes went beyond pride. Relationships she assumed she could manipulate or control now required genuine effort. Reputation mattered, not mine but hers. Her dependence on my predictability had masked her need for accountability. And when that buffer disappeared, she felt exposed. For anyone observing, it's a lesson in respect and presence. When someone invests quietly, consistently and meaningfully, their absence speaks louder than words. People underestimate the power of being taken for granted, until the consequence is real, subtle and inescapable. The story isn't about punishment, it's about awareness, balance, and the cost of dismissing what truly matters. Some losses are silent, but their echo is unforgettable. I didn't revel in her discomfort. I didn't need to. The satisfaction wasn't in seeing her falter. It was in discovering my own strength. I realized that patience, self-respect, and calm determination were more powerful than any confrontation or outburst. For the first time, I felt untethered from the weight of expectation, free to invest in myself without compromise. The world around me shifted subtly. Colleagues noticed my quiet confidence. Friends appreciated my steady presence, and opportunities I had once deferred began to align naturally. I no longer measured my worth by her acknowledgement or anyone else's. My actions, deliberate and consistent, reinforced a truth I had always known. Self-respect is earned silently, but it radiates unmistakably. Looking ahead, I move forward with intention. Relationships I form are balanced, grounded in mutual recognition and care. The mistakes of the past, being overlooked, underestimated, serve only as guides, not anchors. And as for her, I carry no malice, only clarity. The space I left wasn't emptiness, it was the bridge I needed to cross into my own life. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't what you do to someone else. It's what you quietly become.